So you're not in the camera, Clement. You are not on camera then. Okay, perfect. I think on this we should turn to our live stream, yeah, and go see what's Amsterdam doing. They're not doing anything at the moment. So I will start mumbling my way through, and if something's happening on that screen, give me a sign, okay? Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for coming all today. My name is Stephanie. I'm part of a community called Nature2.0. Yeah, I'm the community manager. And first and foremost, I would like to say special thank you to Big Chain DB, especially to Daniel over there in the back, for hosting us. Give them a big clap because they did everything, yeah, including the pizza. So this is our last meetup. It's called Self-Actualization. We're hosting this meetup because we prepare for the largest blockchain hackathon in the world in April. Who joined us before will know about it. We will share a bit about it anymore. We have a little bit of a challenge. We had that last time. We're doing something called distributed meetups, which means you have the chance to see me in live. Yeah, you will visit Dimitri from the airport. Yeah. This is my friend Max in Amsterdam, yeah. Jean is coming in from New York, yeah, and we have some live stream from Amsterdam. So it's pretty much, we are all over the world, yeah. We are into tech, yeah, we love distributed stuff, we love blockchain, so hang in there, guys. Last time was very awful, yeah. But I promise the content is amazing. So this is Max. We go a little bit through what's going to happening. We have an agenda. The first one speaking is Clement. Then we're having a live stream coming in from Amsterdam, and then we have a little break. I get you through the blockchain hackathon. Hands up, who knows about the Dutch chain hackathon already? Like, lift your hands. I'm 1.56 m, yeah? I'm not so... Okay, it's not so many of you. So in April, on April 11th, we start hosting the world's largest blockchain hackathon. And in this hackathon, we're hosting a track called Nature 2.0. And our challenge is to build the unimaginable but buildable. This is why we're hosting the meetup here. Dimitri will host you through the idea of why we're doing it. It's a 3-layered approach, and this is the last one. Listen carefully for what he tells you, because it will make all sense, and it will also make sense what you hear. In any case, go check out our website. It's www. That's not him. That's not me. Oh. Okay, we're on the same page. So it's www.nature2.000. Yeah, you can find also in there everything that the people build. So you can download everything. You can download the code. You can check. You can find the presentations. Yeah, Nature2.000. I'm never sure why he's talking so long. Yeah, but if any of you have questions already, yeah, you're welcome. Otherwise, I would say I would hand over so Dimitri I can actually check that Dimitri is joining via Zoom, I think. Yeah, I think Zoom. Because we also, instead of just using one medium or one technique, we chose to use 3 different stuff. Yeah. So, and these are the important links. Yeah, this is the website I said about. Follow us on Twitter. You can see us a TEDx talk that Jan Peter gave. Yeah. And to the odd, it's because of the Odyssey. This is the way they pronounce and promote the hackathon at the moment. It's called Odyssey. It's pretty much going to be an Odyssey. Yeah, anyone questions? Tian, you're here for the first time. Do you have a question? This was the wrong answer, you know that, no? Okay, perfect. Anyhow, I'll wait. That's a very good question. Thank you very much. What's happening? We have our teams. There will be over 20 teams or over 100 teams applying, and we will select between 10 to 15 of the teams who will join us. We will support you all the way through. So on February 5th, for example, we're hosting a deep dive in Amsterdam, and in the deep dive, we prepare you for everything. We will provide you with everything. We will have all technicals. We have consultants coming in, and during the hackathon, we will enable you to build something that is unimaginable but buildable, basically. Florine, do you have a question? Okay. So, if you want, you can start applying for the hackathon on the 28th of January. Yeah. The thing is, you have to apply. Yeah. It is, the thing is that we really want to, like in German we call it künstliche Verknappung, yeah, which means that we want to make it extra special by pronouncing that much, yeah. This is what's happening next week. We're having a meetup together with Singularity. These slides are completely new to me, yeah, so stay with me. These slides you can see, but as well. We're having a Singularity meetup, yeah. If you happen to be in Amsterdam, you should join it. I read, you are there?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, Tegan will be there. If you're not managed to do it, follow her on Facebook. She's very active, yeah. She can update you. And then there's on the 5th of February, as I said, the deep dive, the Odyssey Hackathon, yeah. This is actually really where it's like interesting. So if you want to travel there, I think it's pretty much worth it. Amsterdam is anyway nice. That's me. I don't think it's nice having it there. Yeah. We had last time a Twitter or the Tinder thing that was funny for the break. That was awkward. I could say you can Tinder me, but this is not happening, so don't Tinder me now. And I will just go forward to Dimitri's presentation because he will come. And I will be here all evening, and even after the evening, approach me. And if you don't find me because I'm hiding, yeah, it's stephanie.schramm@nature2.0. Stephanie Schramm is my name. Good, I will have a sit down, yeah? Oh, I have actually 4 more minutes. That is damn awkward. Shall I guide you through the challenge of, or shall I show you our homepage, for example? Yeah, cool. I will do that. Yeah, because I'm not sure what's happening there. Or do you want to see Max and not hearing him? No, nobody wants that. I completely agree. Yeah. So, Nature 2.0. And if it's not working, it's because I'm really suck at WordPress. You can find that when you see that. Yeah, I'm really, really bad at it. Okay, this is the TEDx talk. Yeah, it's actually nice. Way too long to look at it now. And here's the idea. If you've not heard about it, Trent, may somebody heard of him? He was actually the person who gave birth to the idea of Nature 2.0. It was when he had to put his first keynote, and then we adapted it. Then we took it into, and maybe got it to a little bit of a different level. Yeah, and it's going to be even bigger. So the idea is at the end is not to have like only enable nature in a different way, but also to enable people to have a Grundeinkommen, to have machine-to-machine communication, to literally really change the world. You should join. It's going to be a crazy ride. So, and you can see, for example, the communities, yeah, that we are sharing. I know that some of the biomimicry communities are sitting over there. It's pretty old, so, but if you want to know that they are partners of us, they will join us at the hackathon as well, meaning we also have researchers from them supporting us, or I'm not even sure if they're hosting their own challenge or hooking up with us, but this is what's going to happen. So they are having which university is she at, Saskia? In Utrecht at the university. She's a professor there and doing her research. And after she got in contact with Nature 2.0, she already adapted the concept and wanted to bring it to the next level. I think that's pretty crazy and nice. Here it's another guy. He was this thing why we all have to eat quinoa now. Yeah, it's really awful. He was the inventor for it. Yeah, and he got quinoa urine into the supermarket. Yeah, and so they also bring a challenge into our Nature 2.0 community. So maybe not have to eat quinoa anymore, or like even more different wheat. But he's also part of Nature 2.0, and it does not have to be. It has to be only blockchain. It does not mean it only has to be AI, but it has to be that it's every technology that actually enables nature, bring it together and haze it and make it a bit bigger. He's still not there, is he? Oh. No, damn. So, he's there. Yes, now he's there. Thank you very much. I can show you the website later, or you can actually look at it up yourself, yeah? You're grown-up people. So, this is Dimitri. Now my friend just has to work on the sound, yeah? And I will shut the mic.
We're also kind of waiting for Berlin. Do you know how Berlin is?
I do not know, but I can check with Tiffany. Are you saying that we are waiting for Germans?
Well, they still have 1 minute, so maybe they're being punctual.
No, I'm French and Latin, so I'm quite proud of that one.
The world turned upside down.
No message, but we'll wait. Well, you can already say hi a bit more enthusiastically than you did. crowd. Please say hi to Jimmy.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Hi.
This must be weird for him because he cannot see you. But we all can see you, Jimmy, and you're in an airport right now, right?
Yes, I am. I am. What I'll do is I'll try to share my screen as well, and then we can already test if that's working, right?
Okay, cool.
Um,
Oh, you can share your screen. Wonderful.
okay, maybe. Perfect. So, Stephanie, can you tell me if you can hear me?
Yeah,
So,
she says she's online, so we should hear from her sometime
just
soon.
can hear me. Okay, so let's kick it off.
I'll
Hi.
leave you the ground, Dimi. Go ahead.
Perfect. So I hope you can see my screen. Should have like the road to Nature 2.0 self-actualization. So what we have here today, we're basically in the path towards a hackathon event, and it's going to happen in the Netherlands somewhere in April. And to do that, we are organizing a track called Nature 2.0. And because this is a very big concept and quite revolutionary or a little bit more experimental, we decided to divide it up in a few sessions so that everybody's on board and kind of know what we're talking about. So this is all in order to prepare you guys to have, if you want to join the hackathon or just want to learn something more, then at least you have a little bit of luggage on your back. And so thing we're going to do today is we're going to talk about self-actualization. How can we make natural resources, robots, non-human agents, or corporations or collaborations? How can we make them more smart and more autonomous? So I'm going to give you a bit of a recap of what we did in the last sessions. In the first session, we were talking about plugged in. So here we're talking about connecting machines.
I am only representing myself, but you might have seen me in the Plugged In event, which was essentially the kick-off event of the Nature 2.0 series. And essentially, it would have been great if it stayed in the previous. Oh yeah, so I was representing that company. So it was a three-stage series of meetup. And essentially the idea is to create a storyline and a narrative for developers that want to join the Blockchangers Hackathon. And the Blockchangers Hackathon is about connecting the dots between emerging technologies and breakthrough technologies that are AI, blockchain, and IoT. And at the first presentation that was plugged in, I represented Weave here. That's essentially a technology that enables data authentication and data verification at a sensor level of IoT devices. Interlinked, that you can see here, is focused on identity management of digital agents. So it enables any agent that can connect through the blockchain to be given an identity. And there was Xane, if I remember correctly. Xane is a company that is looking at distributed artificial intelligence. Okay, so this is the second one. The second one I did not attend, so unfortunately I don't know how much I could comment about that one. I know Puracro. Puracro is actually a project that is incubated at NBT, a company I'm working for as a blockchain researcher. And what Puracro is doing is that it empowers, it uses IoT technology and blockchain to essentially limit water pollution at different watersheds. Then there's Ocean, obviously. I wish I could tell you exactly the connection between those three events, but I think Dimi would do a better job. On the other hand, if you have questions regarding what Weave can do or anything before, like we are right with the timing, please feel free to ask. There is no question, no. I studied economics. I didn't study engineering, and I've been working in Berlin since early September. And I'm essentially, I first joined as a blockchain and crypto economics researcher. So I tried to develop crypto economics primitives for the data economy of the Weave. And Weave is somehow pivoting at the moment towards a security company or security business model, if I may say. And so, yeah, that's what I do.
Try to explain this.
Oh, yeah, so this is the, I think it's Maslow pyramid of needs. Essentially, it's a sequence of needs that we can actually enable, or that we believe we can enable with different technology layers. At the very top sits intelligence, and intelligence can be enabled by using artificial intelligence. But yeah, that's it. So what is this slide? Decentralized autonomous agents and organization. Right. So that's something I'll actually talk about also a little bit tonight. I think we have some people from DAO Stack tonight. Can you raise your hand?
DAO Stack is actually in Amsterdam.
DAO Stack in Amsterdam. Okay, great. You're also from Colony. Okay, great. So like DAO is also a big chunk of all these projects, and something that is very much needed for giving self-ownership to nature. So it's very passionate, awesome topic, and I'll be covering a bit of that as well tonight. Yeah.
Shall I look for the presentation?
Autonomous, that's very interesting. What, sorry? No, but like, yeah, I was just commenting.
So this is the moment where you can actually involve yourself into this meetup. Yeah?
Please do.
Like you can actually ask questions, because we know as much as you do about this presentation, which means we should figure it out together. Yeah. So what Dimitri is giving is like the overview, why we started with Plugged In. This is why you were there, which is pretty much happy and lucky that we have him here for both of them, because otherwise he would have listened to me. And the hive mind was in between. None of us could cover that in the self-actualization here. We also have it written down, yeah? We also have the whole concept and why it is like that. We have it written down. And you can hear from last time, we've got a live stream from the last meetup where Dimitri explained it in like actually half an hour length, yeah? And it's really wide, it's really big, and it's big broader. So if you're having the feeling you lacked a little bit of inside knowledge for this time, mea maxima culpa, but there's actually a way to find the knowledge online.
And how many of you were here maybe to any of the previous meetups that took place? Great. So like maybe like some of you could actually plug in the others, no?
So I know the person who's been here.
Ah, yeah. That's nice.
So I'm also a cheerleader. Yeah?
Hi.
Explain a little bit about the hive mind.
The hive mind.
Introduce yourself first, and then.
Hi. My name is Thorsten. I'm one of the co-founders of Biomimicry Germany, and I stumbled a little bit about blockchain because I was totally amazed about the potential of protecting IP, and we have a lot of IP from nature, so 3.8 billion years of innovation, and we just started to realize it, and how we can show it. And the way of blockchain is for me perfect, because then I can show everything. And yeah, for me it's Nature2.0, an interesting project, because they running in the same direction and make it more practical, and how we can make it practical, and what are the interconnections, because in nature we have a lot of inspirations for technical innovations, like cryptography from DNA, or neurological networks for computer networks, or something like this. So, or computing is at the moment one topic that we are oriented on the brain. So we have to learn a different mindset to realize the potential between these connections, and to see the history behind it and the history of the inspiration from nature. And
could you put in one sentence why you joined the hive mind?
Oh, sorry.
Why by Mercury and Nature2.0 the hive mind is the most important part?
Okay. What do you mean with?
Well, how do you interpret hive mind? What does it mean for you?
For me personally, one topic was really catching me because it's DAO, that you can put nature into AI common, and this is for me one point that was really catch me and what was very fascinating for me. Yeah.
Perfect. We will actually have today in the agenda a real showcase of how a DAO community will work. Yeah. So I'm pretty excited about it. It should be at one point in the agenda. And now it's your turn.
Now it's my turn to make people, patient. All right, yeah.
It's not patient anymore. We are actually already there. Yeah. So it's we're nearly there. If somebody else who joined all the meetups would like to summarize, in his own words, you're very welcome.
Please raise your hand.
Okay.
Hello.
Introduction.
No, I'm fine. I don't need to summarize. I'm Martin. I'm just super fascinated by the topic in general, and particular into the possibility to give nature a voice in any kind of way. I'm also a DAO researcher, and I also took a quite deep plunge into DAO Stack. Sorry for Colony. But yeah, I also love Colony. Yeah, so the idea of, I don't know, having not only the Twitter tree that can Twitter to us, but then also having the Twitter tree connected to a DAO and the whole forest all together giving us a voice in the next election would be quite an interesting idea. So yeah, I like this kind of mind sparks.
Cool, thank you. Thanks for the testimony. You think what?
I think nothing. You want to say something?
No. No, I'm okay. I mean, cool. I'm looking forward to start.
Yeah?
I'm just, a bit impatient as well, so please bear with us. Maybe it's time for you to actually grab some drinks before the other 20 minutes later of break, so. Yeah. But if you grab drinks, all the other beers won't be cold, so I'd rather not grab beers now, keep them cold. Okay.
So, and I think now he's starting to put us on. Oh, he's even doing a Q&A.
Yeah, he's doing that all the time already.
Wow.
This is a funny thing. We do something, it's called micro-timing. There's an initial, it's a micro-timing. There's every minute it's timed, so that everybody knows, like, oh, it's 7:23, we should be online, So we start in 1 minute, they know that, and then they have to follow our rules, because we have the person here live, So we be the independent, and you have all the pleasure of not being personally connected. If you have the chance to talk to Dimitri about what he explained there, please use it. He's doing all the time conferences and meetups, and he likes to talk as well. So I give you your clicker, And
we are the first, or the DAO Stack first?
No, we are the first, and I will stay in the back.
Thanks. Is it on Google Slides? I don't know who's responsible for it.
Is it on Google Slides?
I don't know on the presentation where it is. I think Stephanie knows. I'm just helping you guys with technical stuff. I don't know what the presentation is.
Yeah, the slides are in there. Click it through, Clemo.
Awesome. But is it PDF or is it like?
It's
no?
a PDF.
Is it?
No, it's a Google slide. It's just
Okay,
like,
awesome.
Yeah, it's like you send it.
Cool. Yeah, I think they're switching on to us right now. All the time here. All right, as close as I can from my mouth. I hope the guys from... Okay, I can start. Okay, so hi for a second time, everyone. My name is Clem. I work as a blockchain researcher for both NBT and Weave. And today, I won't be pitching any specific product or technology. I'll just be representing myself, as I've been doing some research quite recently on how technology can be employed to help nature's current situation. So my title for tonight was From Human Enhancement Technologies to Nature Enhancement Technologies. And what I mean by that is that on our day-to-day basis, we've managed to increase and optimize our cognitive capabilities. And I believe that technology should be employed the same way to enhance the state of nature. I will go further into this, obviously, in the next slides. I'm very happy to be here. And I think the Nature 2.0 track is a fantastic opportunity for us. Is a fantastic opportunity for us to collaborate and to work on very actual problems. Why does it keep moving? Right. There's a slide normally in between, actually. So I don't know if that's really the actual file that I sent.
I'm here. Shall I have a look?
Yes.
Okay.
So like, yeah, there's normally something that is in between. Maybe you could refresh the page and that should work. I just thought I'd start with something a bit sad to put you in. It's some news that came out. No, it's not in.
Okay, wait. Hold on.
Well, essentially, there's a new study that has been published yesterday that shows that the rate at which ice is melting in Antarctica has increased by 600% since the 80s, and that's something, you know, like this sort of news popped up like very often, and it seems like people don't really react or take action upon these things. But I think it's very important that we keep on like informing ourselves about the stuff that's going on, because it's not normal. And I think that together, by using our collective intelligence, it should be really a top priority for us. And yeah, so over 600% increase in like the rate at which the Antarctica is melting year on year. That was the news that came out yesterday from a scientific paper. If you want to know more about this, you can go to the source. I'll send over the slides. All right. So now maybe we can go. We can dive in. So privatization doesn't prevent ruin from happening. So this is actually a shout out to Garrett Hardin, who you might know. How many of you know Garrett Hardin? One person. Okay, Garrett Hardin is the person behind the tragedy of the commons that was first theorized in 1968. And the idea of the tragedy of the commons is to say that any resource that is publicly accessible, that anyone can access, will end up in ruin, because out of all the agents that consume that resource, there's obviously going to be one player, one agent that's going to overconsume it, right? The problem with Hardin's theory is that he assumed that anyone could access the resource, while in fact there's obviously limitation in the space on how people can access that resource. And what he implicitly suggests is that privatization and private ownership is the key for that. Is the way to avoid that ruin. That's not how things work in reality, because private properties, private ownership lead to a set of negative externalities that negatively affect external and intangible natural commons. So think of the air we breathe, the water we drink, all of that is being negatively impacted by privatization of specific natural resources. So here's like a kind of an incoherent list of events that have occurred recently. But I thought it'd be interesting to go to go through these. So yeah, some government, NGO, and citizen initiatives that have been taking place for like the past 10 years. In 2008, so yeah, this is just to show you that like not all hope is lost, right? There's still hope, but some of these events have been successful. Have had like positive impact for nature. Some of these didn't. For instance, the Ecuador Constitution. I mean, so in 2008, nature has been constitutionalized rights following the restructuration of the legal framework. But it turns out that actually in 2016 that didn't prevent oil companies from drilling into the Yasuni National Park, if I remember well. So you can constitutionalize things, doesn't really help. Then Bolivia followed with the law of the rights of Mother Earth, which is also supposedly giving rights to nature. In 2015, this was a citizen action initiative to sue the US government for not taking action against climate change. The case has unfortunately not been settled because it's been postponed by the Environmental Protection Agency of Donald Trump. They've delayed it, so I don't know how this will be settled. The 2017 New Zealand river case that was a success, where in New Zealand local tribes have managed to give rights back to a river so that it could be represented in court. In 2017, Pakistan managed to plant over 1 billion trees actually between 2014 and 2017 to counteract the effects of climate change, fires, and flooding in the country. In 2018, Netherlands greenhouse case, also very interesting case that was great for nature, where what happened was that a set of NGOs and citizens have sued the government for not taking action as well, for not committing to their CO2 emissions objectives. And resulting this case, actually by 2020, if I remember well, Netherlands should have 25% less CO2 emissions than in the 90s. And in 2008, China deployed 6,000 soldiers to grow forest in the country to fight air pollution as well. And more recently, there's this 2018 France Affaire du siècle, who you might have heard of, which is like a petition that's been circulating around, where essentially the same thing. The people want to sue the government for not taking action against climate change, and the petition has had like more than 2 million signatures in less than 2 months. So, yeah, this is just to show you that things are changing. People are somehow being more and more aware that the way things go is not correct. Now, my problem with that is that if we look at this, we can tell that we cannot simply rely on governments, right? We need to take ourselves action to fight these things. And how do we do this? So, my thesis here is that the Anthropocene fuels the need for human intervention. If some of you don't know what the Anthropocene means, the Anthropocene is the epoch or the point of time after which the climate is being directly correlated to human activity. So there was a point before we could live, we could do our things, and that would have no negative impact, or that wouldn't have a direct impact on climate and on our environment. Here, the Anthropocene implies that we have there's a direct correlation between how we behave towards nature and how the climate evolves over time. And the problem here, so there's two observations one can make and can have here. First, nature regenerates itself better alone than with any help. So that's an argument that I hear often, and people oftentimes say that nature knows best how to regenerate, which is a fair argument. But the problem is that we've pushed the limits and the boundaries of nature so far that right now its entire cycle and virtuous cycle is completely disturbed. So without our intervention, I actually believe that nature cannot sustain and cannot correctly respond to what we do to it. Then secondly, human intervention leads to human bias. This is true. This is very correct. And actually that leads me to this question, why is human intervention leading to human bias? Well, because cash rules everything around me. Cream, maybe you get the reference. This little cartoon, I like it particularly. It just shows that corporations have, you know, greater ease at reaching out and talking to governments and making governments take actions for them, whereas the people don't. And by people, I mean us, right? Because here we might have really good intentions. In the end, there's nothing much we can do if we don't become visible as a corporation or anything that is somehow related to money. So, what can we do? What can we do about it? Huh? Might wonder. It's kind of a head breaker, right? Well, there's a few things we can do, and we can do that thanks to technologies. Yay! How many of you are developers here? Okay, nice, really nice. So let's enhance nature with limited human interaction. Indeed, if human interaction is somehow obviously going to create human bias, then we should limit as much as we can that human intervention. And we can do it. We can try to limit it as much as we can. So first, what we should do is that we should take nature for the sake of, for the simplicity of the argument. Let's think of a forest. We take a forest, we give it eyes and we give it ears because we want it to sense stuff around. So what do? We put like loads of sensors across the forest so that, you know, we can gather humidity data, we can gather like any type of data we can, right? Using many different sensors that we put in that forest. Secondly, we teach it management. So what do I mean by this? Well, we apply a set of algorithms, either supervised or unsupervised, using machine learning techniques, and we use massive data streams that make it so that the eyes and the ears can then analyze and transform raw data to information and readable information. Now, what we also need to do is that we need to make it adaptable yet robust. And here is where blockchain gets in, because blockchain system are decentralized system, and by definition they are robust because as soon as there's a node holding a copy of that ledger, then like it's very hard actually to like shut it down. So you want it to be robust, but also adaptable. And the adaptation part actually is about the decentralized autonomous organization, which I'll be talking in a second. You want to make it able to respond to change, because the environment in which nature evolves also changes over time. And finally, and I think this is the most interesting and important part, you want to give it rights, because you could have like all this super cool technology, you could play around with these things in your garden, nice, but if you want it to expand and to actually be able to really be something, you need to give it rights. And we can do that actually thanks to that one. So how do we give it rights? Well, there is this thing called the Malta Digital Innovation Authority in Malta. As many of you might know, Malta is a very attractive country for any crypto asset management or crypto-based companies because of its flexible legislation. So you see the likes of, say, Binance and Neufund looking at this legislation to implement their headquarters or their operation there. But what's very interesting about Malta is that they pushed things a step like really ahead in how they envision the potential of blockchain. There's this thing called innovative technology arrangement status, and innovative technology arrangement status is simply and can be compared as an LTD or a GmbH in Germany. And it's a legal status that you grant to a company that applies for it, but the only difference is that it's granted to a set of smart contracts, to a DAO. So a decentralized autonomous organization, theoretically, right, with no legal personality attached to it, can be granted a legal status. That's enormous, because that means that, first, this is a backdoor to the entire European Union market, meaning that you can create a legal entity that can acquire assets anywhere in the European Union, and that legal entity is not associated to any human. So you can create code that owns stuff that doesn't belong to anyone, any of us. So that's interesting, I think. So we can give it rights. question is, can it be truly autonomous, as the name suggests, decentralized autonomous organizations? Maybe some people here tonight will have a different opinion, but I think no. I think no. I think decentralized autonomous organization actually is a bit of a misleading name because they are not truly autonomous. You can create a set of smart contracts that can stay there on the blockchain and that can be resistant to its environment, but it needs human input to evolve, right? So actually, it's very much needed, and it would be scary if a DAO would not require human intervention, because in the end, if you look, for instance, at what happened in Brazil with the election of that new president, you need to be able to have code that evolves over time, responding to macro events. If we have a president like they have in Brazil that simply wants to cut down the entire Amazon forest, you need to be able to make some tiny amendments to your code, and that goes through the DAO obviously, and with human interventions. So now I think this is also something that I think we should really emphasize on, is that it's very important to align reward and objective functions. By reward functions, what I mean is how do we reward people that contribute to a DAO or that engage in such a project? So again, if some of you are lost, now we have a forest. That forest is equipped with sensors. The data coming from the sensors is processed by an AI that then transforms that data into a readable and understandable information on which we can have actionable insights. Well, that's the one. So you have this, and all of the management of the code, right, and the program that's running on it is based on blockchain and on a DAO, which has a legal entity, right, and from which you can make amendment to the code. The problem here is that from the very beginning, you need to be really, really careful on how you design the objective function of the AI. So what it's going to do, what is it here for, what is it going to optimize for, and how you're going to reward people. So here, let's start with the first scenario where we want to create a forest that keeps on expanding. Okay, that grows. That's simply programmed to purchase land around it and grow. Okay, and grow like a virus, but a positive one, and that has an increasing CO2 absorption rate. Right? That would be interesting, wouldn't it? We'd have a forest that's hosting also biodiversity, because we want it to be. We don't want it to be a monoculture forest. We want it to be very diverse forest in the tree diversity, so that animals can go in, and life can take place. So we need to be really careful with this, and the way to actually ensure that human bias does not get in, and that there's no financial interest into participating in such a project, is by only rewarding investors with DAO voting tokens, right? So if we implement, say, a bonding curve where people put money in for having a say in how the development of the project should go, rather than rewarding them with fungible and tradable tokens, what you do is that you simply grant them with voting rights, right? So the only way that they can contribute to the project or they can impact the project is by saying in what direction the project should go, but in the end, they don't have any financial value attached to the project. So that's one way of tackling the problem. The one way also you could think about this in order to trigger the instant gratification monkey that Dimi really likes to talk about, is to promote this idea of enhanced air quality. There's this research that was published by the University of Chicago in 2016 that's super interesting, that essentially conducted research in China, and that shows that in China, people are willing to pay between $0 and $15 for 1 microgram of pollution, depolluted air per cubic meter for 5 years. So we've come to a point in time where people are even, people who have sufficient income, because actually low-income classes are not even willing to pay $0 because they don't have anything, but people who have money are willing now to pay just simply to purify their air. So that's also a way you could envision things, by saying, okay, we're gonna create biodiversity, and we're gonna help what's out there, what's left of nature. And second, what we're going to do is that we're going to improve the air quality by creating this positive virus. How does it monetize itself? You might wonder. If we have, say, a diversity in the type of trees that we have in the forest, we could sell a few, and we can also, by using a bonding curve, have continuous funding. Very interesting because it's very different from an NGO as well, since there's ultimate transparency in the code, so you exactly know what the AI is supposed to do and what the mission of the program is. Yeah, so yeah, that's interesting. Then second, that's very sad, and actually that side is a bit weird. But if you ever have a tradable, if you ever have like tradable tokens, fungible tokens, what is very likely to happen is that if you provide contributors and stakeholders of the project with voting tokens and tradable resource ownership tokens, then in that case, people are very likely to be willing to monetize these tokens, and probably they're going to opt for monoculture, which is not really interesting. I mean, I found that particularly sad when I like I'm driving in a car, I see a forest of like the exact same tree for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers. No sense. Exploit natural resources, so they'd probably end up like, you know, digging the ground to find oil or whatever they can find to make profit. So the alignment of the objective and the reward function is again really, really important in how you want to design these things. Finally, how much time do I have left?
You have another 4 minutes.
I have another 4 minutes.
But you have another 8 because they are 4 minutes.
There's
8 minutes.
8 minutes. Okay, great. This is a picture of Paradise, California. Yeah, the point here is to say that we have super intelligence at hand. When people talk about artificial intelligence, and actually I've had this debate with some of my family members that disagreed on the idea of artificial intelligence, and I understand what they mean. Actually, I think that right now we have super intelligence, and we should employ that super intelligence to enhance nature capabilities. What I mean by this is that, as you know, we have predictive models that can better predict cancer than doctors. We have predictive models that can better analyze, like, you know, lips to recognize your speech without hearing you than any professional. So there's like tons of algorithms out there that outperform humans in many ways. And here, again, why I think technology is super important is that the Anthropocene is pushing the limits of nature, completely disturbing its natural cycles, and therefore super intelligence, as in AI, should be used to actually prevent such tragedies from happening, like those wildfires in California, which, by the way, I think 13 of like the 20 biggest wildfires have occurred in the past 10 years. So it's like, yeah, we're not in a good situation, and we should make use of what we have at hand to prevent these things. And we could have, if we had like an technology-enhanced forest over there. Here is an idea of how to govern with a super intelligence. The idea here is that if you could have token holders, right, that can vote, that can cast their vote, but what you could also do is that you could grant a set of voting tokens to the AI itself. So that based on its recommendation, technical recommendation, automatically it could suggest something. You'd need to make sure that, I don't know, it would never be the majority of the voting tokens, because otherwise the AI could go, you know, in a wrong direction. But you could make that suggestion actually in a tangible digital expression of what it recognizes and what path it suggests to go. So that's all, I think, interesting as well. So yeah, my conclusion here is simply that technology no longer serves as an additional production layer for natural resources, but it rather becomes a requirement. I think this hackathon is really, I don't know, a great opportunity for us to move forward with these things, and that we should be creative. We should be the ones creating this positive virus, and we should stop closing our eyes on like this event that I just introduced at the beginning of the talk. And if the hackathon is not sufficient, like we should keep on pushing for having these things happening. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you that I forced him on stage. He stayed there and he did it. I'm in Clem. Merci beaucoup. Yeah. Somebody from downstairs, yeah, I'm speaking.
No, he's from Colony.
Yeah, we don't have a Dalstack person here, though, do we? They're in Amsterdam.
I know that they're in Amsterdam. I made the program, but I didn't.
No, he's from Colony.
Okay, doesn't matter. We have after that we have a person. His name is Nave Grachman from Dalstack. Yeah? He will do that, and he will be in Amsterdam. And I promise the sounds will be better because we have a proper sound system. Yeah. So it's him for another 20 minutes, and then we have a little break of 25 minutes, and after that. We have Jean, and Jean is pretty much a rock star. He will tell a little bit about what he does. He's a programmer, he's an artist, he's lecturing all over the world, yeah, but let himself speak for himself. He's widely known and famous, and I'm pretty much sure you're going to be impressed. I didn't understand that much of what you talked about, but I know it's a huge person behind. And we settle up now, but if you want to ask Clem another question.
Questions, anyone?
Yeah? Then do that, yeah.
Just probably or something.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I will ask if possible to have my screen shared.
You can see yourself in the live stream as well. Huh? With the relay.
There will be a bit of tech, so I will apologize for the little delay. Can I see my screen, the tech team, please? Yeah, wonderful. So, yeah, almost there.
Good
Here I
evening.
come. So here is your presentation. You have your clicker, right?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
not Dimitri.
Can you hear this? Yeah.
Oh. You saw that, right? You saw all. Yeah, this is it. And I will also prepare something else, which we have. And this is. Can I also? Yes, wonderful. And yes, no, can't do that. How can I do that? Ah, damn it. Sorry.
That's okay. Until we begin, maybe I'll ask you a question.
Good.
The topic, or one of the topics tonight, is self-actualization, which supposes that everyone has some kind of a different way to fulfill ourselves, different areas of interests, as well as different skills, tendencies, capability. So let's see if it's true. Who's here a scientist? Okay. Who's here an artist? A business person? Cool. So it works. And who cares about different things? Who cares about pollution? Okay. Who cares about politics? Who cares about finance, economy? Who cares about the ocean? Football. Okay. So after we establish that, and there's lots of information I can share with you regarding DAOs. This is going to be my topic, but I wanted to connect to you to something that you can come out from tonight with a tool, with a skill, or with something that you can use in order to achieve this self-actualization goal, apart from other goals that the technology can be used for. So once we begin, and I'll introduce myself, Nave from Dalstack, and it says Head of Business Development. The way I see business development in this context means to connect technology and solutions to people's problems. So technology on its own can't stand alone. It has to be used, otherwise it's not doesn't feel its full potential. So whenever you create something, a technology, a product, solution, you have to find people to use that. In order for that, you need to understand what people need. So this is the connection that I'm in charge of, and this is what I'm also trying to tell you today. So let's begin. The first slide. This is the message I want to leave you with, which is, activate your community with Alchemy. So Alchemy is a tool with which you can actually activate communities of people in a decentralized way. And this is the practical tool that I'm going to share with you tonight. And I would like you to think of things that you would fulfill with your communities that you share your interest with in your own way, in your own tendencies. So Dalstack, what it does, it builds this stack of solutions, which at the top there's the DAOs, which are the decentralized organizations. And when we say DAOs here, we mean people's DAOs. DAOs that are made of different people, not necessarily different computers, although it's also possible. Examples for that are the DAOs that we created, Genesis DAO, which is the first one I'm going to share, and the DX DAO, which I'll share at the end. Below that, there's the apps, decentralized apps. So like you have apps on your computer or on your phone, all of them are centralized in the sense that they keep their data, and they have someone centralized entity has an ownership over the data, over the platform, and so on. In decentralized applications, so the DAO can control, an application can control its code, authorities, to perform different activities there, and the data is decentralized as well. And below that, there are the layers which help you build on top of these functionalities. So ArcDB is the decentralized database. ArcGIS allows you to build applications, and Arc and Infra actually allow you to connect the decision-making engine that we're building to whatever application that you have, which doesn't have to be related or doesn't have to use any of the other tools. So what is a DAO actually, in our sense, in our context? A DAO is a bunch of people represented by their Ethereum address or blockchain address, blockchain wallet, which can be, you can imagine it as my bank account, in a sense that the interaction between people and the DAO are actually transactions. So in this case, you see a list of people from the interface of the application, a list of people with their name sometimes, but mostly their address, their reputation within the DAO, their reputation score in percentage. So if there's 100 people, each has 1%. And this is dynamic as well. And you have on the top right corner, you have the status of the DAO funds. You can see there's 100 Ether there, something around 10,000 US dollar at the moment. And why do we need these Ethereum addresses? Because what happens in the DAO, anyone can make a proposal by clicking this button here. A proposal means that you're proposing something, suggesting something that the DAO would spend the money on, and it can be anything, and I'll touch on that going forward. But what's important is that DAOs are actually organization of people with a shared goal and with some shared resource or asset. This is a screenshot from today. You can see there's 122 members on this DAO. This is an exemplary, a good example of a proposal, and I'll touch more about how proposals work going forward, but this is an example of a proposal that someone asked for 50 Ether. Anyone familiar with Ethereum has an Ethereum address, a wallet? Okay. So this is again something in the 5,000 US dollars today. And you can see the number of votes here out of the organization. It's something between 22% and 20% against. And you see 30 comments there. So this is, imagine a debate on some proposal from the government entity, finance. They give the budget. There's some deliberation on the proposal. There's some debate. So this all happens here. So someone proposes something and everybody can talk about it, discuss on that. And eventually, once the proposal passed, so automatically it cannot be stopped. No one centrally can stop it. The funds are transferred to the one who proposed, and they can fulfill whatever they proposed. And the assumption is that only proposals that would benefit the organization and the shared goal of the organization would pass and would be fulfilled. Now, why do we need this organization, right? If we are, let's say, 4 people, we have a shared goal. We want to create this kind of event as of today. So we can, and we have a budget for that. We have a shared budget. We don't need any system for that, right? We can talk between ourselves. Everyone would say their vote, would say their opinion, and then we can operate on that. But what happens if we become, if we become a very large organization, like, right, solving something bigger, like we said, pollution or global warming requires more people. So now everybody needs to take a look at every decision, any proposal. It also doesn't make sense because we don't work full time on everything that we do. And if we had to, this wouldn't work. So it's not really scalable doing this offline or doing this directly. And what the blockchain allows is for us to do a massive collaboration on scale in a decentralized manner. So people can be in different countries, different continents, and still trust the system for making transaction of money in the case of Bitcoin. But here, they can collaborate with shared resources by trusting the rules of the game that the protocol provides. And without going too technically into the protocol, you can imagine what happens if you add another layer of people who are kind of auditors. We call them predictors. So they would look at proposals from this large organization, and they would boost them in a sense that they would stake their funds on the proposals that they deem most important for the organization's success. And by that, they will bring them to the attention of the organization. So if we're all talking about different things here, different conversation, we want to nail down or to spot the most relevant topics, the most important ones for the organization to make shared collective decisions upon. And this is done through this boosting process where these predictors are curating, are selecting the important the important proposals for debate, and then the big DAO, the community, can make a decision on or first on the most top priority proposals. So actually, it's an attention market. Before we talked about different areas of interest that we all have. So the competition is actually not necessarily on the resources, but it's on my attention, on people's attention. So how do you maximize people's attention in an organization and allows it to grow massively? So again, how exactly do you activate your community? So first, what's the difference between organizations that activate their communities and organizations that don't? So the world's most dynamic projects are user-driven. You can think of the most obvious examples, which I'll show you in a second, but what projects with their user communities that are empowered, so they have some resource, some asset, some funds. They're coordinated, so they work together. They're not working in different directions, although they can do locally, but in the big scope, they're coordinated towards a shared goal. They're scalable, again, they can grow very fast. And they're decentralized in the sense that no one holds a central point of power over the organization. Imagine if we all shared a fund for doing work for our organization, but it would be, the money would be in a bank account. The funds would be in a bank account. Some individual will have better access to those funds than the rest of the organization, which doesn't happen in this case. And examples for that, for these kinds of empowered communities, are Reddit, Apple Store. Who creates content on these platforms? Not Apple, mostly, and not Reddit, mostly. It is the users, the community. And what happens there, the people are, the users are very much engaged. So there's a high growth. Whereas communities that are not, projects that do not activate their communities are struggling, and you can think of newspapers or cable TV, where there's a separation between the ones who create the content and the ones who consume. And that you don't have the same engagement. So I believe personally that we have whatever goal we have, whatever organization we want to create, we need to think of that. How do we allow the community to be engaged, to contribute actively, not to be only passive consumers? And we offer a way, again, to do that. So mobilize your organization's community with Alchemy, a platform for community DAOs. So DAOs, again, decentralized autonomous organizations. And this is how Alchemy looks. So you can see that anyone can make a proposal on a project, even someone from outside the organization. If you have something to say about this goal, so in this case, Genesis DAO, the first DAO that we created in DAOstack, actually serves for the proliferation and to promote the concept of DAOs, specifically the DAO of the Genesis DAO, and also, of course, the success of the project itself. Now, anyone with an Ethereum address can come and ask for a reputation in this DAO. Anyone can come and make a proposal, and if your proposal passes, then you get the funds and you can go do the work that you promised to do. Proposals have unlimited scope. So if, again, you're an artist and you have a nice way to represent ideas, concepts, you can do that. And there's an example for that. If you're a finance person, you can make some planning for the organization. If you're a coder, you can create code. You can propose for code. If you're an event organizer and you're organizing people, you can make that. And these things happen. Proposals are passed by the community vote. Nobody can grab funds from the organization without the consent of the community. And again, it doesn't have to be 51%, what we call quorum. This is maybe the main thing that the protocol holographic consensus that sits inside the solution actually allows. That even if 100,000 people are sharing the same DAO, and I make a proposal and 20 people vote for it, but it's 19 people, or in the sum of the reputation, I have a relative majority, even if it's not 50% of the organization, it will still pass, and it will be still aligned with the shared goal of the organization, which is very important. So it is both scalable and resilient to manipulations and to attacks. So just to see here, so you can see the reputation reward. Every proposal that I make, I ask for reputation as well. Reputation gives me more voting power. And the funds. I need the address, and I put some URL for the link for the proposal description. And as you can see, as you can see here, there's lots of proposal currently on the app. So there's hundreds of huge numbers of proposals. Boosted proposals, as I said, are the ones that go to the top. And even with the high activity levels, Alchemy stays efficient. And you can see it here. In a second, I'll show you some data from that. Now, you can ask why blockchain, and I touched on that before. So again, today, people collaborate, and they have shared funds sometimes in an organization. But again, someone always has a direct access, which is preferable to others. The blockchain allows you to make it really decentralized. And for people around the world to collaborate, I'm here, someone from Brazil, someone from China, and we can collaborate without having to go through any bank, any government entity, any other platform actually, which is quite amazing. And all the records of the organization, all the books, what did we spend the money on, what were the discussions, and so on, everything is by definition on the records, open, transparent, and this also increases the trust people have for the organization. A word about soft governance, because I've been talking about technology all the time. But what we learned in our experiment on the Genesis DAO is that there's a big layer of soft governance, which means people who emerge as leaders in an organization without being given power, but it's something important for the organization. They drive it to different places. Emergent culture. Suddenly the culture is created. And to remember that DAOs consist of people with needs, and the needs are emotional. So this also returns again to the question of self-actualization, where everyone can have, if I have an idea, but I don't have the tools or the skills or the knowledge to fulfill this idea, I can propose that. And if it passes, someone can grab that, and they have the coding skill or the content writing skill or marketing skill or arts, and they can fulfill that. So, just some numbers on the Genesis experiment. So, 230 proposals within a few months, 60 Ether, which is around $13,000 per month, were spent. It remained decentralized. Now there's 120 people. From the beginning there were 54, so high growth in numbers, but it's still decentralized. No one holds a majority power. And these are some examples of proposals that passed. So 2 months ago there was this event. Some of the speakers are similar to today. This event was organized by someone from the community DAO. Again, he's not an employee of one organization, he's just a member of the DAO. He proposed, let's do an event. He got the funds and he organized that. Someone said, let's create an explorer. He was a coder, he is a coder. They're coders, they wanted to make an explorer by which you can analyze these 130 or more proposals and make analysis on them and see what drives people to vote for and against and what kind of topics. And so they built this explorer on, again, the funds of the organization after they passed this proposal. Accountability task force. This is the proposal that I showed you in the beginning that has had this discussion, 30 comments, and very tight voting results. So this was actually for 50 Ether, and they got even more. They are doing actually this soft governance. They define the culture, they do accountability work, which means if I made a proposal, they want to see that I actually performed, fulfilled it, and also creating, again, promoting this culture within the organization. Someone wanted to make an article on the ways to use alchemy, and they did that, again, through a proposal. An artist wanted to propose to demonstrate with art how the algorithm and how the protocol actually works, and they did that. So what do we need to launch a successful DAO? And this is where I want you to think, if you had this ability to create this DAO, and you have a bunch of people who you think are also interested in what you're interested in, and they maybe have skills that you could use together. So all you need to have is these 3 ingredients, basically. Obviously, you need to have users. You need to have people. So if you're alone, it's not going to be an organization. Of course, but it doesn't have to be too many. It can start with 10, 20, 50, and it can grow indefinitely. You need to have some shared goal, right? It doesn't have to be this number or that number, but it needs to be enough to allow you to operate. And it needs to have a shared goal or a mission, which also can change by proposal. I can propose now, I think that our organization's goal is something else, and you can do that. And if you have these ingredients, you're ready to start. So, lastly is an example of a DAO, which is actually kind of a bottom-up DAO, in the sense that the way the reputation or the voting power is given here is actually by an initial process that anyone can take part in by staking some funds in this distribution. This DAO is going to be the owner of a decentralized application. So this application, in this case decentralized exchange, will be owned not by any particular single entity or company or person, by the DAO. And if the DAO wants to improve this, or if the DAO wants to change how it works, or change the distribution of revenue, and to take for the members of the DAO, it will be possible. And this is quite amazing. And this is the timeline for this. It's called the DXDAO. And if we have a little bit more time, I can give you a demo, a live demo. If not, questions. I'd love to hear your questions.
If it can be quick, it can be done.
So, can you show the? Can you show my screen?
I should go there and there. And
cool.
There you go.
So, this is the feed. Here you can see the different proposals that are active now. And if I go to history, I can find all the proposals that are actually have been decided upon before. And you have sorry about the connection, maybe a little bit slow. This is the button on which I can create a proposal. As you can see, I can say summarize my proposal. Sorry, I think the connection here is a little bit slow, so we're not going to do that. I can show you later on if you like.
Yeah, maybe you can show to the interested ones during the break how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm also encouraging you to check it out. Any questions? I'd love to hear your questions. Yes, please. Do we have time?
Hi, thanks for your presentation and your explanation about the DAO stack. I was wondering, it's a nice experiment, and the voting should be more or less done. But how is it funded? Because
good question. Yeah. So the question is, how is it funded? So when I said top down and bottom up, this also is a way to look at it. An organization can decide. An organization that has a community of users or employees can decide to allocate funds to this DAO, to a DAO. And this DAO can be aimed at empowering, again, and improving or fulfilling the direction of that organization. So you can fund it just in order for the community to be able to make decisions in a decentralized way. So it can be a community of customers of an organization, or just as the people who are influenced. So people from a city, residents of a city.
Yeah. And is there a relation between the funding that people do and the reputation they get?
Definitely not. This is the difference of the holographic consensus protocol and the reputation system, that there is no link between the amount of funds that I have and the reputation. You cannot buy reputation and you cannot sell reputation. The only way to get or to lose reputation is by a proposal decided by the DAO. So if someone new comes to the organization, even if they're a billionaire, the only way for them to join our community DAO would be for us to vote for that. And if and by definition, we only vote if we believe this person will bring value to the organization. And the other way to fund an organization is bottom up. So think of subscription. Think of us contributing to philanthropy or to NGOs. We contribute, we donate, and we expect to see social impact happens. But here, instead of funding the pyramid of management of the NGO, we can rid of that. We can only fund actual activity. Yes?
Could you make a little bit more specific and say this specific DAO, Genesis point, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
What is the goal of that DAO and how did that DAO got funded?
So the Genesis DAO was funded and founded until now by the DAOstack Technologies company. And the purposes of it, as I mentioned before, are first of all to help the success of the DAO, the Genesis DAO itself, the concept of DAOs, to create more DAOs, and in the same way also contribute to the economy, to the Gen economy, this predictors networks economy, because this is the way it got its funding in the first place, obviously, and the success of this community also very indirectly helps the organization in that way as well.
As developers, you need a sandbox to try that.
you can, yeah, of course it's an experiment as well. But it's not only an experiment because you see the way it operates, the Genesis DAO, is in a flat way. And there's different directions that people want to take this. And this is quite similar to how the company or the smaller team works, in the way that there's it also as an experiment, but also as a real part of the organization. It contributes, as I showed. Someone makes an event. It's not just an experiment. It's a real event, like tonight.
And on February 5th in Amsterdam in the Nieuwe Liefde, we will be hosting a whole event that's also aimed at finding new economical structures and the question how they get funded. So we will work that out with a group of 250 people, February 5th.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Navi. And thank you to everybody. Yeah. And this is now time for break. I believe Berlin is a bit delaying with us, so we'll take 15 minutes from now. I even had some slides for that, but it's okay. It got away. So yeah, talk, meet, eat, drink, and can I have the slides back because I want to share something? Is it possible?
We have also break here, and after that we have Jean from New York. Yeah. I'm not sure. Was it really awful? Hands up. It was an awful experience, or was it okay? It was okay, no? You know, it cost us over 15 hours, and I don't know how many heartbreaks. Time. It worked out this time. Yeah. Thanks for that. I'm very prosperous. New York will work as well. 15 minutes break, okay? And thanks for everybody.
But our next speaker, yes, if this is not on. Yeah, wonderful. Our next speaker is actually not here as well. His name is Jeannie Cogan, and he's a researcher at Sourcestone, and he's online, so I'm asking now my live stream team if we can switch to his screen. Are we live with him already? I believe we are. Good evening.
Hi.
Wonderful. Can we say good evening to Jeannie? That's very enthusiastic. Can we say it a bit more enthusiastically? Wonderful. So I'm sorry you can't see us, but we can very much see you. And if you would like to start, I don't know if Berlin is already on. Checking now.
Yeah.
Live stream, are they on?
Yeah. You guys can all see me. Should I begin?
Yeah, go ahead. If you're ready to go, just go.
And you can all see me, yeah? I'm
Yes.
going to share my screen, so now you should see me, actually, I guess.
Yes.
So do you see some slides?
Yeah, we can see everything. You can go ahead.
Okay. All right, so I'll get started. So yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I just want to give a quick shout out to Dimitri, who spoke earlier. Dimi actually connected me to Stephanie, so I'm really happy to be able to speak to you about this idea. And I wish I could be there in person, but hopefully I'll get a chance to talk about this more soon. I have a lot of slides and lots to talk about, so I'm just gonna dive right into it. I'll tell you really quickly a bit about myself. So I'm somewhere in between art and machine learning. I've been studying machine learning, computer science for most of the last 10 years of my life, but I've been kind of interested in both musical and visual art applications of machine learning. So I started out in this field of music information retrieval, studying things like recommendation systems. So that's kind of how I got interested in machine learning in the musical domain. I started doing things like building these musical instruments that would use machine learning to train some sort of a digital audio synthesizer so that a performer can actually take one of these musical instruments and teach it how to play some sort of a virtual instrument using machine learning in some sense. So this kind of got me started on thinking about more creative applications of AI, and I started making a lot of visual art that was using things like generative models. It's something I'm going to tell you a little bit about in just a few slides, and also things like Deep Dream, for those of you who are familiar with a lot of the really cool visual art applications of AI that have become really prevalent over the last couple of years. So doing things like this is just a little bit from my portfolio. You can kind of see a lot of this work online, doing texture synthesis. There's basically a texture synthesis of Google Maps, and it's kind of doing this infinite zoom. So if you've ever had a really horrible nightmare where you're looking at your cell phone trying to zoom in on Google Maps, this is what I imagine it kind of looks like. I do things like just having fun with machine learning. I'm really interested in trying to get people to find the lighter side of these techniques and try to be engaged, because machine learning is usually kind of brought up in the context of very typical sort of company, corporate things. And I think people really get engaged most when they're kind of doing either artistic or funny applications like this. So here I'm just inserting myself into various paintings and so on. So yeah, I was actually there. Also, for anyone who's interested in this stuff, I put a lot of it online. I've been running this website called ml4a.github.io for the last couple of years, where I and some collaborators, we create a lot of practical materials for people to get started with machine learning for artists. So things like instructional guides, Python code for generative models, training GANs, and so on. All of this stuff you can find online. I'm also really active teaching, so I record a lot of my classes and I put them online. So if you go to the classes section in ML4A, you see I just finished one at New York University about called The Neural Aesthetic, and it's basically an introduction to machine learning for artists, and so on. Okay, so the main thing that I want to kind of talk about is this idea of an autonomous artist, and this has been something that's been floating around for the last couple of years. I'm going to show a few kind of related ideas and talk a little bit about what I think I can add to it. The basic idea of an autonomous artist, or an autonomous artificial artist in this case, is it's basically a DAO, like a decentralized autonomous organization that creates and sells art, basically makes its own art, sells it, uses it to pay for its resources that it needs. And the resources that an artist needs are basically compute. Obviously, that's the big one, of course, compute. But also, in my case, data, because I'm interested in using machine learning systems that can continuously learn from a stream of data. So this brings in another kind of dimension to it, to have data rather than just using some sort of a procedural algorithm is kind of the point, and something that I want to integrate into this idea. So I've been really interested in this idea for a really long time. Like even before I was really familiar with a lot of crypto stuff, I was interested in how machine learning could be used to sort of bring about what I think of as the collective imagination. And what I mean by that is we're all generating tons and tons of data and centralizing it somehow, and we can use machine learning to make inferences from that data. And I think those when we generate images, I think there's something to be said about how we're tapping into the collective imagination of all people. This is something that I've been kind of expounding for a little while. I don't have enough time to really get into the details of that. I'm writing an article about it, which I'll mention later, that will try to kind of elaborate on this a little bit more. But in the age of generative models, we're really beginning to do incredible things. And a lot of it is kind of funny, but it gets just more and more realistic with time. So this is what you're looking at is an example of a type of generative model that takes in as its input a sentence and then generates an image based on that sentence, right? So neural networks' perception of what a woman eating a delicious sandwich should look like. And it's pretty funny, but for me, it's really interesting because these are entirely learned in an unsupervised way from all of our data, right? So from hundreds of thousands or millions of images that have been labeled by people. And so I think it's really trying to kind of in a computational way study our collective, the collective way that we perceive things, that the way that we write about images, the way that we describe them, and so on. This idea took a step forward for me when I first encountered this idea of the art DAO. And this is so I lived in Berlin for the last 2 years, and I got a chance to get to know Trent McConaughey, he actually runs the machine learning meetup in Berlin. And I gave a talk there about some of my work, and this is when I first began to kind of learn a little bit more about crypto, and I came upon, through my conversations with him, about this idea of basically using a blockchain to create an autonomous program that creates art. And this was kind of, there's a couple of articles by Simon de la Rouvière and also by Trent, where they kind of give like a basic formula for some sort of a process that can make this autonomous artist idea. And their idea was kind of to basically use some sort of a public mechanism for selling the art, Getty or Shopify or whatever, where every time the program makes a piece of artwork, it timestamps it on the blockchain. And then it's able to transfer the rights to buyers using basically some cryptocurrency. And so I thought this was really interesting. And I've also been pretty interested by a lot of the other kind of, art or creative applications that have been coming out in the blockchain world. So people are probably, of course, everyone's familiar with CryptoKitties, and there's also this new platform called SuperRare, which I'm casually familiar with. I don't know if anybody from either of these organizations is there. I think you guys are great. It's really, really interesting thing to me. And these are kind of like the crypto collectible scene is basically where you own some sort of an asset on the blockchain, which is characterized by some kind of DNA in a sense, right? So all of these are assets that are controlled by tokens. And each of the images are essentially characterized by some string of numbers, which describes the features. And this is actually really, really, really compatible with some machine learning stuff, which I'll talk about in a few slides. The closest thing that I've seen, and this is a small project, I'm not sure how far along they are, but there's this new project called Crypto, which maybe some people are familiar with. I don't think it's kind of has as much traction as CryptoKitties, but it's kind of along the same idea. It's like what CryptoKitties is, except instead of having some sort of a procedural generative algorithm for generating the cats, where, you know, some artist came along and said, okay, we have all these kinds of features, and they're being sort of brought together by you know, in this sort of DNA string. Instead, what Crypto does is actually they train a generative model. So this is a machine learned generative model on a data set of anime characters or manga characters. And you'll see in a moment when I introduce these that these are also basically all of the images are functions of some string of numbers. And those numbers you can think of as a signature which can be collected in some sense. And I think this is actually like a potentially very powerful idea, bringing in this idea of generative models into this framework. I also want to mention, so Autonomous is another project that I'm really interested in. So Simon de la Rubier, who I mentioned, who came up with the ArtDAO concept along with Trent, and also came up with curation markets, which I'll mention in a few slides. He has this project that he initiated called Autonomous, which is now kind of attempting to create this self-sustaining, self-improving autonomous artist. But for what I see right now, it's mainly using procedural algorithms. So basically, like a JavaScript that generates some sort of an artwork, but there's no sort of generative model functionality in it at the moment. So let me tell you about generative models. I keep on mentioning these. So basically, these are machine learned models that capture a data set and then can then synthesize samples that look like they came from that data set. So if you have 1 million images of cats, then you're able to learn a model which takes it as its input this basically random numbers and produces an image of a cat. And it learns these in such a way that you have this multitude of images that you're able to generate. So you can train it on anything you want. So here, these are just examples of cars and screens and things of that sort. And I don't have enough time to get into the mechanics of this. I'll show you some later where you can learn more about this if you're interested in it. But basically, these are essentially taking neural networks, which are of course very famous in the machine learning world, doing more or less all of the stuff that we're excited about with deep learning is being done by neural networks. And neural networks people are usually familiar with in the really simple context. They're basically these very flexible algorithms that can learn how to do things like classification. So it gets an image of a dog or a doge, and then tells you that it's a dog rather than a cat or a piano or something like that. And now neural networks have become increasingly complex over the last few years. So we have neural networks that are modeling on the order of hundreds of millions of neurons, and sometimes hundreds of millions of connections and tens of millions of neurons. They're getting bigger and bigger every year, and because of that, we're able to do more and more complex tasks every year. So let me skip this a little bit. There's some work that shows that neural networks are capturing these, in an unsupervised way, low-level features of images, in the sense that you can actually isolate what each of the particular neurons in a neural network are learning. So for example, like this is just some visuals from some work in 2013, visualizing CovNets, where basically the authors talk about how different neurons inside of a neural network become sort of responsible for identifying a particular type of feature, which can be very complex. So for example, this neuron is able to recognize things like lattices, or grids and things like that. This neuron is finding things like wheels, this one finds upper bodies, and this one finds text, and so on. And what's really amazing about this is that it does so in basically without us telling the neural network what the features are. So it's able to do this all automatically, essentially, which makes it very conducive to automation, right? Which is what blockchains are all about. All of these generative models are characterized by, whatever architecture they use, they have a sort of common schema, you could say, or like a common API, where you have some neural network, like let's call it F, and it's trained on a whole bunch of images, thousands or millions of images. And then the network is trained so that it takes in some random sequence of numbers, and then that random sequence of numbers translates into an image, right? And each image is uniquely identified by a single input, right? So this is kind of, you see how it's parallel to the CryptoKitties idea with the DNA assigned to a single image, except that there's this training process that learns it. So this is really great because then we can take well, I'll get into this in just a little bit, but we can use systems that collaborate on bringing in a whole lot of data, right? Because it's very hard to collect data, but you can do it much better when you have a lot of incentives for people to pool their data together. There's a few different categories of generative models. So like autoencoders are kind of what you see in the left, which use this sort of process of compression. Unfortunately, again, I don't have enough time to get into the details, but but also generative adversarial networks, which people are probably most familiar with. That's what Crypto is based on, that use these two neural networks in this sort of adversarial process to train a really, really effective type of generative model. And this, going back 3 years, this is what it looked like. So you could generate things like faces with these GANs, as they're called. So you could do arithmetic on the features and do things like add and subtract different features. I use this in a project called A Book from the Sky, where I trained it on Chinese handwriting. So you could do all this kind of cool stuff with generating characters and interpolating between them and so on. And what's really crazy about GANs is just how great they become year after year. So they were invented in just 2014, and they could synthesize faces at about 32 pixels. And you can see the progress year after year. At this point, we're making very, very high definition, nearly photorealistic images. So it's really hard to tell these apart from actual real faces. So you can see just how fast these are getting a lot better. And of course, they have the whole latent space idea that you can play with. So this is some work released by NVIDIA. Well, you saw these earlier. I myself trained one of these on a collection of paintings from WikiArt. So from WikiArt, you can get hundreds of thousands of paintings, open source, and throw them all together into one of these gigantic progressively grown GANs, and it's able to generate just, thousands of unique paintings, right? And you can see that they captures a whole lot of diversity, images that look very abstract and images that look kind of like manuscripts or portraits, landscapes, sort of more abstract works, and so on. And again, GANs just continue to get more and more realistic. These are all fake pictures. So this is some work by DeepMind just a few months ago. So it's a photorealistic dog and a cheeseburger and an island, and it's just really, really getting pretty crazy. I've been working with these big GANs. This is basically mixing owls and dogs. This is just a joke. So this is an owl generated by big GAN. This is a dog generated by big GAN. And this is sort of a hybrid. So you can do this sort of like genetic modifications on these by putting these together. Here's another owl dog. And it looks like a character from Harry Potter, doesn't it? Like sort of Griffin. I don't know. Let me speed up a little bit because I'm running out of time. There's a whole nother category of image-to-image generative models that can do things like generate faces, generate portraits of people. They are becoming increasingly realistic. So this is some work by NVIDIA. These are all synthetic faces. And the synthetic video game screens, just a lot of like really, really amazing work. I want to skip through some of this stuff. Okay, I want to mention a few of the components that are important to the autonomous artificial artist idea. So you guys are probably mostly familiar with this centralized machine learning idea where you have some AI company that transmits some service, usually cat videos, to a bunch of users, and they basically give all their data to AI Incorporated. AI Incorporated trains a neural network model and then provides a better service to the customers and then sells the data or the rights to the model or some API above it for some money, right? And this is kind of how centralized machine learning works. I think you, of all people, this crowd knows exactly all of the limitations of that, so we won't talk about them. But I'm really excited about a few ventures that are trying to basically come up with alternatives to this model, decentralized machine learning ideas. And one of the best ideas, I think, is in this space is OpenMind. I don't know if anybody from OpenMind is in presence, but this is a project that I'm really excited about. So the OpenMind team is trying to create basically a framework for decentralized private machine learning. So the idea is that instead of just having users sending their data to AI Incorporated and then having AI Incorporated train their neural network internally, instead you have this system where there's a smart contract and some sort of an oracle that lives in between AI Incorporated and the user population, and they actually send the neural network they actually send the model to each of the users individually. They download the model, they improve the model and by basically using it a little bit and adding some modifications to the model that make it a little better. All of those modifications go to the smart contract, which basically combines them all together and improves the model in a smart way. At no point does AI Incorporated have knowledge of any of the original data from the users. And this creates basically a framework by which potentially a population of users can actually collaborate on a model that is essentially co-owned by all of them. So this is really, really interesting. Also, like a few other components that are important to the artist idea. So Simon de la Rouvière, who mentioned, also came up with this curve bonding idea. I really am running out of time, so I don't. I think probably most of you are familiar with this, but basically you can use this to seed like something like a curation market or a continuous organization. So basically, where a bunch of users can collaborate with a token to basically collaborate on some sort of an organization together. Token curated registries are another example of this. Unfortunately, don't have enough time. But yeah, I would definitely go to all these links to try to understand the things that you can do. I think I'm running out of time, so maybe just give me another 2 minutes, and then I'll be done. So it's important to note the sort of broadness of the idea of curation, right? So you can think of even a software repository as as something that uses curation to be managed, right? In terms of feature requests and pull requests and things like that, those can all be tokenized, and to create some sort of a system for managing even a software repository or an organization in a decentralized fashion. So basically the idea is that you can combine all of this framework for decentralized machine learning using like token engineering, curation markets, and large-scale social coordination inside of a DAO that implements a generative model, right? So here's the idea. You have some sort of a DAO which has a generative model, and all of the users can contribute data, so image in the form of images, sounds, text, whatever, images, data, compute, and whatever other resources the model needs in order to be trained, and then the model generates artworks which can then be sold to
Jeannie, sorry.
Oh yeah, running out of time. Yeah.
No, I'm cutting you just to tell you that you can take 5 more minutes, so that you can slow down a bit in your pace and take more time enjoying.
I'm sorry, I'm rushing. I think I put together way too many slides. Okay, yeah. So yeah, let me kind of back up on this and kind of describe the idea in a little bit more detail now that I have some time. So here's the idea, right? So you have a DAO, and it has some sort of a framework for collecting data in a decentralized way, like using the technologies that I just mentioned, and collecting data and training a model to generate images based on the data. So you have this kind of a setup where there is both value going into the DAO and value coming out of it. The value that goes into it is the data, right? So people that contribute data could be potentially compensated, right? So you have a situation where the artist owns the work and can sell the work to patrons who wish to essentially mine artworks out of it. But at the same time, the organization is able to compensate users who contribute data and data, code, and compute. Those are kind of the 3 components that you need. Potentially, you can work in things like curation markets because, of course, curation is something that's very necessary for art. And obviously, like a curation market can also be used to mediate governance of this if the organization that does this is fully decentralized. So that's the basic recipe. And it's very much in line with autonomous and other proposals that have come out in this space. The only real innovation is kind of plugging in a generative model. And the reason why generative models are so conducive to this idea is that they kind of provide a very homogeneous interface, right? So you have this idea where every image that's generated by this is associated with a particular, basically a random sequence of numbers. And so you can think of that as that could be a token that you trade, right? So there's a whole lot of permutations of this idea that I'm still working them out myself. I haven't really decided exactly what works best, but that's the basic idea. Okay, so let me really quickly announce like where this is all going. So I am in the process of writing an article to introduce a project that I'm calling Abraham right now. This is the logo that I came up with, and basically Abraham is going to be, I hope, a project to build an autonomous artificial artist. I think it's very, very much compatible with the projects that I just mentioned, particularly autonomous. And what I'm hoping to do is I'm in this space of machine learning and teaching it a lot. I have an audience that's basically interested in creative AI, and I'm hoping to kind of try to get people just talking on a Slack channel. And then basically creating some software to maybe realize or study this idea. And because I'm not really sure exactly how it should be built. I'm personally myself very inexperienced with crypto. My background is in machine learning. So I'm my first idea is really to try to get the basic idea out there. And before anything is implemented, I want to kind of see the Slack channel and a GitHub organization, maybe even explore some of these governance mechanisms that might give it some sort of a way to kickstart it. And I've been writing, those of you who know me, like I've been writing this article for like a year now. I'm a really, really, really slow writer. I was hoping it would be done by now, but it's not. However, I should be hopefully posting this in the next month or so, maybe month or two. And then there's nothing on this website right now, just a landing page, but basically on abraham.ai, it'll contain links to all this stuff. And I'm not really sure how this should work or what exactly the mechanisms to make it work should be, but I'm hoping to just get the idea out there, get as many people interested in it as I can, and then at some point start a discussion about how this can actually work, like more concretely. So that's the idea of Abraham. One project also I want to mention really quickly is I'm going to be teaching a class at ITP, like this is at NYU, which is called Autonomous Artificial Artists, and it's basically an attempt to do this at a very, very small scale with a group of students. And I'm going to use this as a springboard into sort of how mechanisms for this. This won't really have much of a crypto element. It'll be really mostly focused on how to combine many people's contributions into a collective artwork, because that's a necessary component. So this is kind of something to keep an eye on as well. Okay, so that's all I have for you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I'm really hoping that people kind of keep track of this project, and if you want to follow my work, I'll be announcing it through these channels. And I'm really hoping to get as many people interested in this world to collaborate with me and make something really neat. So yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can give an applause. I don't know if you could hear it, but yeah, really enthusiastic. Yeah. I was wondering how many lives you have. Are we taking time for a question here? I know Berlin cannot talk, but is there a question? We have time for one question. Be quick, be sharp.
Yes, how does the autonomous artist choose what he will make? Like normally an artist has some inspiration or a kind of style of his paintings or whatever what he makes, but how does the machine do it? Because is there like I saw the last picture of people paying something. Are those the people who say I want something like abstract painting with the colors purple and yellow, for example, or does it choose itself?
So there's a couple of ways I've thought about this, and the first way that you can think of would be some sort of an interface that lets people, patrons who wish to buy artworks, they could potentially like try to either pick the numbers themselves that generate the artwork, in which case you can think of it almost like mining. So well, they're mining artworks from it. And maybe they can, like you said, like specify certain characteristics that they wish to, and then kind of reverse engineer from there. That's one way of doing it. Another way is I've become familiar with this technique called deep interactive evolution. There's a good paper about this by Julian Togilius and some of his collaborators, where you can actually use a mechanism to get feedback from a population of patrons. So people are basically interacting with the artist and generating artworks, and then they are giving it feedback, like I like this, I don't like this. And from that feedback, you can actually attempt to predict automatically what artworks are likely to be most popular, and then basically try to generate those. There's also a lot of work in reinforcement learning, which is a branch of machine learning that's concerned with trying to create autonomous agents. So maybe if you have something like, like agents that work autonomously, basically, there's a really strange thing where there's a lot of common goals in the blockchain world as well as with the machine learning but they're not really interacting. So, reinforcement learning is all about creating autonomous agents, right? So that's very, very much in line. But anyway, I digressed a little bit. So like the idea would be that an autonomous agent could actually learn how to basically pick the, curate its own work. So just like if you were an artist and you were curating your work, you can actually do this using machine learning as well, based on the feedback of the market. So something like that. I'm not exactly sure how it should work, but those are like some basic rough ideas.
Thank you very much. Thank you again, Jeannie. You can again applause him.
Yeah, thanks for asking me.
And well, I don't know what time it is for you, but have a nice day.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and have a good rest of the
Yes, we'll get in touch soon. Take care.
Okay, thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
And
So did you think that he was talking fast? He was talking super fast, though. Oh my God. Yeah, he was awesome. But like, it was very hard for me. Like,
last talk of the evening is with someone who's not here, actually. It's someone named Bernard Fabin, and he's in Berlin at the moment. So I will ask.
I'll cut him out because I like my voice better. Yeah. Say hello to Elat and thank you for staying. Yeah.
Hello.
It's always right to finish, yeah. And no pressure, but the talk before was very high energetic.
Yes.
So no pressure to you, but
no pressure. Well, I think pressure is good if you want the high energetic kind of. Good. Do you have a clicker?
Yes, but I first have to get your presentation.
Perfect. So, hello everyone, I'm Elad Verbin. I am Berlin-based, a scientist turned investor, and I'll tell you about free-range algorithms, which are algorithms that are self-sovereign, they run themselves, they are independent economic units, and so on, and I'll tell you much more. This presentation can be found in this tiny cc/free-range algorithms together with some of the references I will give. Yes, so let's start. So my claim is that algorithmists in 2030, algorithmists are the people who write algorithms and design them. I am, for example, in my previous career, I was an algorithmist, and I claim algorithmists in the year 2030 will be these Rambo characters, Alan Turing meets Rambo kind of characters, but that's not necessarily going to be all good. There's some bad stuff about it, and we'll talk about both. So let's go back to the year 1995. Suppose I'm an amazing algorithmist, which I am. I am writing algorithms like a champ. And suppose the year is 1995. What can I do? Well, I have to go work for a software company, and that software company needs a business model and a delivery model, and it ships CDs, right? And these CDs have to have other CDs which are upgrades, and the whole thing is a complete mess. Fast forward to 2010, and is this less of a mess? I'm not sure. This is how an AWS maintenance screen looks like. If you are an algorithmist, if I'm an algorithmist, I have to go work in a company that creates maybe SaaS, and we run that SaaS. It's like Facebook or Gmail or something like this. My algorithm is a little bit inside of that, maybe the ranking algorithm inside of Facebook, right? Or some recommendation system inside of Amazon that tells you which product you'll want to buy. So I write this little algorithm that can't be too big because computation is restricted per client. And then we have to run it on AWS and deploy it. And we need a giant DevOps team. And again, a marketing team and the whole thing. And it ends up being a group sport where I'm the guy in the yellow and everyone else needs to help me to operate. The vision is that in the year 2020, maybe 2025, it will look very different than this. You'll write a Solidity code, and you will deploy it maybe on Truffle or something like this. And maybe you'll click a big button saying deploy, and the contract will be deployed to the Ethereum network where it's auto-scaling. It runs, suppose Ethereum is scaling by then, it runs auto-scaling, and I, as an algorithmist, will be able to write this Solidity code, which is pure algorithmics, click a button, and the thing lives by itself. In reality, this is the current situation, but hopefully we'll end up with this kind of situation. You click deploy, and it runs. And so the first conclusion is that algorithms are becoming cheaper and easier to deploy. Okay? Also, algorithms, have you all noticed, are becoming more and more powerful. You can see this on the street, all the media, everyone's talking about how powerful algorithms are, and how they're controlling our lives more than we'd want. You'd never hear someone in the year 1990 complain about how powerful algorithms are, partly because no one knew what an algorithm was. They weren't very important or powerful in our lives. They've become arguably too powerful. And Trent, this is a slide I stole from Trent, would argue that this is because data is the important stuff and not the machine learning algorithms themselves. But in any case, data is more available, strong algorithms are more available, and we live in a world where algorithms are more important and more powerful. Okay? Overall, this will be the algorithms of 2030. They can do a lot by themselves, and the question, and we're already seeing some early evidence of this by Bitcoin itself. Bitcoin was developed by a person called Satoshi, or persons called Satoshi Nakamoto. We still don't know who they are. Some people I know have pretty good guesses, ask me. This was developed. They were an algorithmist of some sort. They posted this white paper online. They worked with a team of similar-minded people. There wasn't any DevOps expertise or marketing expertise in this group, and yet we have gotten a network with a market cap of hundreds of billions of dollars, and like a very strong following and a strong algorithms that lives on. So you could argue that Bitcoin is one of the first huge successes of this model of a single acting algorithmist. Okay, so now I used to teach algorithms in university back in the early 2000s, and my students would ask me, why are you teaching us this? Why aren't you teaching us to program and to develop software? And we were like, we didn't have a good answer. We were like, well, it's interesting theoretically, and maybe one day there will be uses. When Google kind of became very prominent, people stopped asking that, and by now, it's very clear that learning algorithms is a very powerful way to kind of control the future. Now, the question is, as an investor, I'm particularly interested in this, what happens in a future where developing and deploying complex algorithms becomes cheap and easy? How does the world look after this? So one interesting, the interesting properties of this world is there's no need for business models anymore. I mean, if you want to make a buck from it, you can implement a business model, but you don't have to. You click deploy, the thing runs. Right? This didn't exist in 1995. You couldn't deploy an algorithm anywhere without it making money to support itself. Now you can. There's no DevOps in that. You click deploy. You can crowdsource the marketing. You can give some system where people who, like affiliate links or something, pay for people to spread your algorithm forward, and there's very little friction, business friction, tech friction, the thing just runs. So what kind of advances, what kind of superpowers do we get in this kind of world? Well, imagine how a currency system lives or is created in a world with no friction. You get Bitcoin. Imagine how a marketplace looks in a system with no friction. I don't know what you get. Imagine a social network in a world where you don't need a business model, where if you came up with the best algorithm for a social network, you click deploy and the thing runs and grows by itself because it pays people to spread it onwards. Imagine unmonetizable inventions. A project called Oscoin, a Berlin project, is looking at this kind of thing very interestingly. It's like, what do you get in a world with no friction? So you could argue you get the rise of the single algorithmist. But let's take it one step forward. Once the algorithmists click deploy, what is their role? The thing runs without them. So we kind of have a reversal of power. It's not the algorithmist's world anymore. It's the algorithm's world. And in fact, what you arguably get is a world of free-range algorithms. This thing that was deployed to the Ethereum network now lives by itself, and you arguably get Skynet, right? An algorithm that runs by itself and control and sends and makes decisions by itself and so on without needing the explicit help of any particular human. So a free-range, I would call a free-range algorithm something which is self-sovereign, which is economically independent, meaning it runs its own economy, and it's economically, it's strong, it's a closed economic loop. It makes autonomous decisions by itself without asking anyone. It uses humans for its needs, but it doesn't depend on any particular human, right? So an AI, a general AI like we think of it, in the dystopias, is an algorithm that does everything by itself without needing humans at all. But I'm saying there's something much more powerful than that, which is an algorithm that pays us for the things that we can do and it cannot do, but it is in charge and not us. It's a much more powerful entity and a much more near future entity. It is unstoppable because it's on the Ethereum network. It's very, very hard. It's maybe arguably possible, but it's very hard to stop something which is on Ethereum. You'll need to censor it in a concerted human effort. It exists everywhere and is, let's say, algo-economic, which is what you think about when you think about crypto economics, but you replace it with algorithmic and economics, meaning algorithms that operate in an economic sphere. Okay, so this is a too complex slide that shows the entire architecture as I understand it right now of a free-range algorithm, and we'll see this slide throughout the talk. So the 5 components of a free-range algorithm would be narrow AI services, which is the computer running by itself the AI services it will need. This might be natural language processing or computer vision and so on. There's an incentivizing part, which is the computer asks humans to do work for it, and it pays them for it. So this might be prediction or staking or affiliate for spreading it, or a future key style system where the algorithm is thinking of splitting in half and is asking the humans, which half do you think would be more profitable, and incentivizing not yet AI capabilities like things that humans can do now, but we have not learned yet to do using machine learning. And there would be, so these would be operations kind of services. And then you have the growth services. So mutation and procreation, which is you define evolutionary search space where the algorithm tries to improve itself. And you run maybe a genetic algorithm, maybe it spawns children, but maybe not too many children, and it tries to kind of improve itself. And then finally you have defense, which is if it does get attacked, this is kind of optional, but presumably one day these kind of algorithms could get attacked, and they would want to incentivize humans to defend them, right? So you would maybe pay off the Ethereum, you'd notice an attack, you'd pay off the Ethereum miners in order to not censor you, and so on. And finally, there's a command and control module, which is maybe the most important of all, which coordinates these subsystems and tries to find or to achieve the target function that it started with, whatever it is. It prioritizes, and so on. Okay, so this would be the pattern of a free-range algorithm. And let's consider Bitcoin, and is Bitcoin a free-range algorithm? So it kind of has some of these, but not others. So it would have some algorithms as proof of work and signatures that give it its capabilities. It would have minor rewards, which is the way you incentivize humans to give their computer time for it. You'd have the ability to fork, which is a weird thing because it doesn't do that autonomously. And new miners can always join, which is a sort of defense, and there's some amount of command and control like difficulty adjustment. But it's not quite there yet. So let me ask another question about Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin self-sovereign? And this is like a question you take home with you. I don't have an answer. To some extent it is because it's kind of an organism that keeps living and keeps growing, and we see it keeping living because it keeps getting stronger from year to year. Even if its market share declines, it keeps living, and there's incentive for new miners to join. So Bitcoin seems self-sovereign, but it's not aiming at any particular target except serving humans with a currency system. So this is arguable, but we can try to design free-range algorithms that are self-sovereign and do have some agency. So autonomous, that Jean kindly gave an introduction to, is a self-owning, as its creators define it. It's a self-owning, self-sustaining, self-improving, autonomous artist using the Ethereum blockchain. It was created and ideated by these people. And the idea of it is, as Jean described, humans submit art generators, the algorithm runs these art generators, the art is auctioned off and represented using nifties, humans stake in order to curate it, and finally the proceeds go to the human artists, the stakers, and most importantly, maybe Autonomous itself. So you could try to fit it into our model, and indeed, there's narrow AI services, which is the algorithm spawning the art, right? There is incentivizing humans for services, which is the humans that submit the generators, and the humans that stake in order to decide what art they think would be useful or favorable. There is a mutation procreation method, which is, as there's more profit, there's more generators and auctions. And there's some command and control, which kind of says Autonomous must survive and it must grow. But still, it's not totally an agent. It's not an independent agent as much. There's another project that Dimi pointed me to, which is called Bitcoin Intelligent Life. It's a project from TU Delft. I won't tell you a lot about it, but you can find it in this Trello board. You can also get to that by scanning this QR code. It's basically, so it's set on top of another project from TU Delft called Cloud Ornate, which buys servers with Bitcoin and allows the computer to own the servers and own money, and the servers can spread, or this algorithm rather can spread from server to server and so on. So it kind of fills the command and control part, but maybe not some of the other parts. And you can kind of merge, maybe, it would be really interesting to merge Autonomous with this project and see what you get. This project has not yet added intelligence and learned to be autonomous, but that's on, they're hoping to do that as part of the course. So is Nature 2.0 a free-range algorithm? Well, I don't know. This is a really interesting question to think about. And let's maybe move from the kind of abstract to the very practical. Let's think of the hackathon that this series of meetups is leading up to. Let's think about creating an MVP of a free-range algorithm, or maybe an art project that kind of looks like a free-range algorithm. Okay, so you could, of course, if you create in the hackathon Skynet, then all the power to you, but tell me before you do that, I might go hide. But before that, how would you build a free-range algorithm in a hackathon? So would you use Ethereum? And the answer is probably no, because Ethereum doesn't scale well yet, and it doesn't have privacy features. So if you think of running this algorithm, free-range algorithm on Ethereum, its mind is totally transparent. You see what it's thinking. So a really powerful free-range algorithm would not be transparent, and so you might want to explore at least a platform that preserves privacy, like Enigma or something like this. But even better, you can use a federated blockchain or a completely decentralizable design, where you run things on a central server, but you design it so that it can migrate to a privacy-enabled blockchain as soon as a scalable one appears. So I would go somewhere around this area if I was building a project for the hackathon. And also, if you want to build a free-range algorithm, what kind of abilities should you keep in mind, or what kind of tools? Well, for the narrow AI services, I would use something like TrueBit or OpenMind to run stuff like machine learning, like computer vision, and so on. For incentivizing humans, we need to create a self-sustaining economic system, which means that everyone needs to be incentive compatible. Like, it's not enough to kind of wish your way into an economic system. You really must make sure that it works, that it makes sense in terms of incentives. For mutation and procreation, you want to use something like, you want to take inspiration from something like A/B testing and to spawn offspring, but not too many in order to explore the design space. You need to actually define the design space very carefully, right, in order to make sure the algorithm kind of has enough space to explore to be truly efficient, but not too much that it loses its way. And finally, you might want to take suggestions from humans, and the humans might stake on which algorithms or which parts of the design space would be most valuable. And finally, for defense, which is really, you don't really need to implement it right now. No one's going to attack this. But you can think of crypto-economic defenses and ways to detect censorship. And finally, for the command and control, you would think of something like reinforcement learning that is that is a machine learning way to make decisions in an uncertain space, and ideas maybe from control theory. And you must define a target function, because this thing has to have a will of its own to represent some sort of thing that is not just asking you what to do, but rather it sets some target, even if it's maximizing paperclip production. Right? It needs to have some target to be a true free-range algorithm. And these are the parts that I think were least explored that would be most interesting for an art project or some demo, which is the narrow AI services part, maybe using OpenMind to explore the design space around here, and also the command and control parts, and specifically what would be an interesting target function for a free-range algorithm. And let me suggest a few. So you could define a free-range algorithm that tries to beat everyone at, what's that computer game? Well, whichever computer game, right, of your choice. You can think of a crypto trade bot. So Numerai, a project, is a project doing that. It asks quants or algorithmists to suggest trading algorithms, and it offers staking services to decide which of these algorithms to use. But what is the goal of the Numerai company there? You could just run a bot or try to run a bot on hopefully a scalable blockchain that does the same things and is not centrally controlled at all. Rather, it controls itself. And it pays humans for services, for suggesting algorithms. So you could think of a crypto trader bot. You could think of a real estate bot once we tokenize the world, once we tokenize housing projects and so on, a real estate bot that sells and buys houses according to tips it gets from people, and it pays them off for the tips or something like this. You can think of, in a much more immediate future, you can think of an ENS domain name trading bot. The ENS is the Ethereum name service, and you can think of a squatting bot that decides which domains to pay for and basically squat in order to make a profit, and it will fund itself and so on. And the main barrier to deploying all of these right now is privacy, as we've discussed already. Okay, so what do you see in a world populated by free-range algorithms? What will we get? Well, you could have a Skynet kind of free-range algorithm that tries to eliminate all humans and control the plant itself, or you can have self-owning forests like in Nature 2.0. You can have both of these, and I think because the idea is out there, because algorithms are getting more powerful and will be very soon be able to be deployed autonomously, we're definitely going to have all kinds of actors deploying them. So we might as well accept the eventuality that this will happen and try to steer as much as we can in this direction of doing things that can only be done with a completely autonomous system that does not depend on particular humans. And finally, so I won't read this quote, but William Gibson in Neuromancer has pretty much predicted all of technology that has happened and I think that will happen. And in particular, he has AIs that have agency and restrictions and legal status in Switzerland, by the way, in Zug. He somehow figured out that Switzerland would be the country which would give agency, legal agency to AIs. And he has these two AIs, Wintermute and Neuromancer, that are planning and controlling and paying off humans and using machine learning in order to be, to be AI agents and win at their target function. If we're talking about giving rights to AI, so Trent talked about this way of figuring out how to give rights to AI, but free-range algorithms, I think, will not need us to give them rights. We can hope that they give us rights. Finally, if you think of Bitcoin and, to a large extent, free-range algorithms as a new, if you think of the singularity as the eventual direction of humankind, which is evolving and developing technology at an exponentially increasing rate with all of its autonomy and much more kind of a broader set of organisms that have rights and have agency, you can think of free-range algorithms as kind of a next step of evolution of stuff that we create and then have autonomy of their own. Bitcoin might be the first step in this, and we kind of need a mental switch. Rather than thinking of us creating algorithms and controlling them, we should think about the algorithms that we create as independent agents. Because if you look at Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin was created by humans, but kind of acts like an independent agent. It's unstoppable anymore. I think other algorithms will end up having this status, and we might as well start thinking about what to do about it. So thank you for this. In free-range algorithms, the algorithm pays you to work for it, and all of the details are here, and if there are any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Anybody has questions?
Yeah, great presentation, thanks. So how do you think regulation or even like creators, do you think like a necessity for creators of these free-range algorithms to have this kind of sign a charter or sign something they can be accountable to, I mean, although there's no power because they could just deploy anything however they want, but is there something that will be needed in that area, you think?
Yeah, so I would love some sort of self-regulation just because there's some nudging in coordination, right? Coordination between humans is the hardest task that we know. Because it's so easy once you have a coordinate. When there's a tragedy of the commons or some sort of other economic tragedy, it's so easy for one actor to renege and go do their own thing. So I would love some sort of self-regulating entity for this, but it's so easy. It's like asking miners to get, to self-regulate. In the end, it's going to be so easy to deploy a free-range algorithm that it's very hard to control, but I would love it for... I think the important thing is that most smart people I know really do want to do good things, and if they find a way to self-organize, we might have enough of a mass that is trying to do good things that the rest of it is kind of necessary evil. Yeah.
Just thank you very much. Like the energy was as great as in the presentation before. I just want to make some advertisement. There is a thing that is AI ethics guidelines from the European Union, and I think it's still open for contribution. So basically, you can contribute to what you think ethical AI should look like. And I think, yeah, the more smart people comment and give their input, I think the better we are off.
Yes, there's also new ethical guidelines for machine learning by the IEEE that just came out a few months ago. So they're already published. I think the hard thing is to create community around this, right? It's not just for the practitioners that care about ethics, but it's for more and more of the community to care about this. Okay, thank you very much.
Cool. I also think that you had an amazing energy. Yeah, no pressure, but the pressure worked out. Thanks very much. That's actually the end. Don't feel kicked out. We have some more beers. Please join us. I will be here. There's also, when you said the TU Delft, we're using the hackathon now to kick off Nature 2.0, but we will also have another acceleration form, which is us working together with all the technical universities in the Netherlands, co-creating with them. So it's all the technical universities, and we create with them. You can find that actually on our homepage as soon as we manage to have a decent WordPress person to update that. That's not me, so volunteers very much welcome. Besides that, you can join us on our meetup. Yeah, we will also announce more meetups to come on the 29th. We have the Singularity meetup. We have got our, on the 5th of February, our deep dive. Say thank you to the speaker who's still here. Thank you for attending. I'm Stephanie. I enjoyed it. Thanks. Thanks so much for Daniel. Like, actually, the person over there I was citing